Spies. Spies are everywhere. They are on your streets. They are at your work. They are in your homes. They are even in your washing machines. They are everywhere, and they are looking for everything they can use against you and your families. Oh, and somehow they also get the coolest loot in Team Fortress 2, so that's also pretty fucking annoying. But what if I told you all that right now the commentary YouTube community has been infiltrated, that we currently have a spy hiding among us? You would probably be skeptical of me saying that, would automatically assume that I'm just full of shit. Well, you would be 100% right to think that, because luckily for us, we do not actually have some sort of James Bond villain who is sabotaging our community from the inside, but rather we have a skeptic community washout who thinks that is exactly what he is accomplishing. Today's video is going to be a very special lesson in how not to conduct yourself on the internet. A story with a great moral lesson, if you will. This is the story of one Xander Hall. Xander Hall is a streamer from the skeptic YouTube community who makes mostly political content. However, he also does speedruns on just how fast he can put his audience to sleep with his boring as fuck streams. And when I said that he is a total washout, I really meant it. Nobody in the skeptic community or the commentary community wants to claim him as one of their own. He is like that middle schooler who is not allowed to sit at any lunch table, so he has to go sit down in the corner. Now, recently, he has decided to announce to the entire internet his plans to infiltrate the commentary drama community here on YouTube in order to de-radicalize them of alt-right influences, in order for him to bring them to the light side of the force by instead radicalizing them to center-left thinking. Now, this is a very stupid decision. Besides the obvious flaw in his plan of infiltrating a community while announcing it to the general public, it kind of defeats the whole purpose of fucking infiltrating a group when you're telling everybody exactly what your super secret plans are. But this is extremely dumb for a completely different reason, and that reason is simply that it is literally pointless. The majority of people involved with commentary YouTube, and the rest of YouTube for that matter, are already left-leaning for the most part. Actually, the entertainment industry as a whole is one of the most liberal workforces in the US and around the globe. On YouTube, you're really not likely to see that many people identifying with the alt-right, let alone traditional conservatives. Now, to be fair, just because you're not likely to see them does not mean they do not exist. There are content creators who identify as right-leaning, and therefore there are content creators who identify with the alt-right. But that is to be expected because we do not have a system of gatekeeping where we decide who can or can't be a content creator based on their political views. And you know what? We really shouldn't, because that would be a fucking brain-dead decision that would only end up backfiring on everybody on this platform. Not to mention, policing what other people's political views are is a pretty radical portion of your own ideology that needs to be looked at, because how are you going to save people from an extreme line of thinking if you can't even do the same for yourself? This is an important thing to consider because the alt-right are extremists. They have gone from a traditional line of thinking into something completely different. This is not a simple game of tug and war where you can edge them over to your line of thinking. If you believe that you can win somebody who is so far gone that they think vaccines cause autism and they are superior based on the tone of their skin with clickbaity videos and shit takes on Twitter, then you are actually fucking delusional. So what has this accomplished for Xander Hall? Well, nothing, really. All it has really done is cause YouTubers who actually followed and supported him before this to now unfollow and block him, because surprise, surprise, telling a community that you are trying to infiltrate them in order for you to convert them to your line of thinking comes across as something only a fucking crazy person would do. Yeah, I'm shocked, Xander, that your Jehovah's Witness act did not work out for you. Not only that, but you have made it impossible for yourself to socialize with anybody in this community outside of them making fun of you for this. The only thing he has gotten out of this is exposure, but unfortunately, that is not always a good thing, as we will discuss in a minute.
I'll be demonizing everyone who's white, and I'll be calling you all Nazis.
Now, you must be wondering why I said fame and exposure is not always a good thing, and one of the best examples that I can provide is simply that it puts an eye on everything that you do and everything that you have ever done. People get to see you at your lowest point. They get to see all your embarrassing moments, how you have talked to others, and they even get some insight into your behavior. Speaking of which, everybody has their unhealthy habits. For some people, it's caffeine. For me, it's cigarettes. And on the other hand, for Xander Hall, it's slandering people.
That's a lot of people. Well, you'll be very sad to find out that JonTron is at the very least a Nazi and or at the very least an alt-righter and at worst a Nazi. I imagine many of you already know this. I have a lot of fan crossover, I assume, for the most part with Destiny, or at least many of you used to be Destiny fans before his Lefty arc. So you've probably most likely seen Destiny's highest profile debate of all time, which was his debate against JonTron. Ironically, it was this debate that I ended up watching back in late 2017 that sort of jostled me the most out of the alt-right pipeline, ended up sort of pulling me out. And I ended up falling down a rabbit hole of Destiny's videos, joining his community, learning how to debate by arguing with people.
Now, obviously, if he's going to call JonTron, a massive content creator here on YouTube, an actual fucking Nazi, Xander Hall must have overwhelming evidence to back up that claim, right? Well, no, actually. Xander had trouble barely bunching him in with the center-right, let alone the alt-right, and did not actually provide any evidence to justify his claim that JonTron was a fucking Nazi. In short, he knowingly made a slanderous and, in my opinion, completely false accusation about someone that can not only tarnish their reputation beyond repair, but could also make them a target for doxing and harassment. Believe it or not, this is not the first time that he's called somebody an actual fucking Nazi without sufficient evidence to justify it. As it would appear, this is a continuous habit for Xander. He labels people as Nazis to his heart's content with no real concern on the consequences. However, when you look at some of his more interesting videos, like one titled How I Escaped the Alt-Right Pipeline or How I Almost Became Alt-Right, you get a clear picture on why he's acting this way. He feels guilty that he did not have a strong enough moral conviction to reject extreme right-wing ideals when he was younger, so now he has to make it up to himself by projecting his insecurities onto everybody else. In the same video where he calls JonTron an actual fucking Nazi, he comes forward and says that it was actually JonTron and Destiny's debate that made him walk away from the alt-right.
Sort of jostled me the most out of the alt-right pipeline, ended up sort of pulling me out. And I ended up falling down a rabbit hole of Destiny's videos, joining his community, learning how to debate by arguing with people.
Well, no offense, but if that is what made you begin to question your extremist views, then maybe you are just an extremely impressionable person. And it doesn't just stop at that level of slandering. The majority of his debate videos here on YouTube will usually include these very annoying, very clickbaity titles that insult his opponent in the way that creates a preconceived bias for his viewers before they even watch the video. Now, before I continue, let me just say, this really isn't a big deal to me. I don't care. I really don't give a shit if you want to insult somebody in the title of your video. If you want to do that, go for it. However, I do have a bit of a gripe with one thing and one thing only, and that is hypocrisy. And I find it hypocritical that someone who has complained about blood sports and the idea of criticizing things in bad faith in the past himself sets an example of criticizing people and promoting his videos in bad faith. Before I end this segment, some food for thought first. Xander Hall is someone who admitted to being radicalized by the alt-right, and Xander Hall is also somebody who uses another person's affiliation and association with the alt-right as a means to justify labeling them as a Nazi. So, using his own justification and reasoning by his own logic, there is literally more evidence that Xander Hall has been associated with and radicalized by Nazis than there is for half the people he has labeled as actual fucking Nazis. So, do I think he's a Nazi? No, of course not. I'm only using his own criteria to make a point on how easily corruptible his excuses for slandering people actually are, how his reasoning for doing so can literally be used against him at any time.
There we go. I mean, I'm not... There we go.
Confidence is a crucial tool for anybody who wants to be a content creator. Without it, your words simply fall on deaf ears. And it's a good thing to have confidence because with it, you can endure the test of anything and everything life throws at you. Arrogance is when you become overconfident in your abilities, and when confidence as a whole starts to become a bad thing for you. You start to overextend yourself and take on tasks that you have no realistic way of accomplishing. Smugness, on the other hand, is a completely different beast altogether. Smugness is not only something that is completely fucking worthless, but is also a sign of faux confidence, fake confidence in one's abilities, if you will. The kind of person who acts smug about everything is somebody who radiates insecurity. Xander Hall, and the rest of the skeptic YouTube community for that matter, are prime examples of this. Xander, in particular, is somebody who really does not handle criticism very well, especially criticisms made regarding some of his more derogatory actions on the internet. He likes to set this trend of deflecting such criticism by saying that his detractors are just quote-unquote triggered. For example, if you point out how it's disingenuous and damaging to label somebody as a fucking Nazi without sufficient evidence, then you are not making a valid criticism towards him, you're just mad, bro. If you laugh at him for making a fool out of himself by trying to convert the commentary YouTube community to the teachings of his Lord and Savior Bernie Sanders, well, ha ha ha, stay mad. If you explain how it's morally reprehensible and just shitty as a whole for him to use a YouTuber's suicide to have some sort of gotcha moment against somebody he does not like, then you just have to cope harder. I will give him credit where it's due. He is technically triggering people. He is making people mad, but on the other hand, no shit, retard. If you're going to say that people are responsible for somebody else's suicide, or if you're falsely labeling them as white supremacists, then how do you expect them to react? Nobody is going to be falsely accused of being a Nazi by you and just say, well, I respectfully disagree. And another thing to mention is really what exactly is this accomplishing for Xander Hall? Because whenever somebody is triggered by him, it rarely has to do with him arguing them into a corner and leaving them flabbergasted with what he has to say. No, people are not triggered because you're a profound intellectual. They are mad because you are doing blatantly shitty things and are genuinely a very uncomfortable person to socialize with. You are not triggering people any more than a person at a baseball game who screams out Epstein didn't kill himself during the national anthem. Yes, you made people mad, but not in a way anybody could respect or understand. And while we're on the topic of smug insecurity, let's talk about a Twitter interaction between Xander Hall and your not-so-friendly neighborhood lawn ornament. Xander Hall and Keemstar got into a little argument on Twitter, and at some point Keemstar called him a virgin, which was a mistake in which Xander Hall's girlfriend promptly corrected him on, and it was embarrassing enough for Keemstar for him to delete his original tweet. Now this was a very, very proud achievement for our big boy, so proud that he made it his pinned tweet on his Twitter for quite a while, kind of like how you would do with a finger painting that you were very proud of. You would pin it on the fridge to show off to your parents. He did it. He ratioed Keemstar. And look, let's not get into the technicalities of how it was actually his girlfriend who ratioed Keemstar and not him, okay? This is his special moment and we should not ruin it, because he will just ruin it for himself if you give him enough time, which he did when he added a comment saying, "We ratio Copestar in the name of Etika," not only invoking the name of a dead YouTuber for Twitter likes, but also pinning the death of said YouTuber onto Keemstar and saying that he was responsible for it. Now, let me let you guys in on a little secret in the commentary YouTube community. It's actually not a tough thing to do to ratio Keemstar on Twitter, or to make him look dumb in general. Now, I'm not saying it's not an accomplishment, but what I am saying is that it's the bare minimum of what you should have been able to do. Winning an argument with Keemstar is like completing the tutorial mission in any video game. What does it say about the confidence in your abilities if winning a Twitter argument against Keemstar is one of your best highlights on the platform? As we mentioned before, Xander Hall is a very impressionable person. After all, it did not take much for him to fall down the alt-right pipeline. All it took for him to get radicalized by the alt-right was a fucking Minecraft server. And following that, all it took for him to disavow the alt-right ideology was a Destiny VOD, which led to him embracing many of the viewpoints shared by Destiny, which eventually turned to him being radicalized by more far-left ideas. Now, as for why I'm mentioning this again, it actually might surprise you. Xander Hall, he's a very insecure person. He is also a very impressionable person. I'm not saying this to insult him, but rather to empathize with him, to try to understand how he got to a point where he's doing and saying the things he does, and to understand how it came to be that he put himself in such a position of scrutiny on the internet, and in turn maybe even figure out a way for him to help himself and for him to get out of this terrible mindset. Because he's not trying to go out of his way to convert the commentary YouTube community towards his line of thinking because he's comfortable with his own ideology. Nobody fights for their system of belief quite harder than those who are struggling with their faith in it. A good example of this to look into would be conspiracy theorists and religious zealots. Now, I'm not trying to convert him to my belief system either. As a matter of fact, I've literally held his political views longer than he has. I would just like to see him stop projecting his insecurities on those around him, because it's really fucking annoying. Now, to summarize why being smug is not a good thing. 1. It's a sign of insecurity, and people pick up on that. 2. It puts you under the illusion that your actions do not have consequences, and that you cannot be rightfully criticized. And 3. It makes you look like an insufferable douchebag. So in summary, Xander Hall is a political LARPer who has been fighting the alt-right by clickbaiting video titles where he falsely labels YouTubers and detractors as Nazis, white supremacists, and whatever damaging thing you can label a person as with no evidence whenever it's a relevant topic. Did he make his video on JonTron or PewDiePie because he was actually passionate about those videos? Well, no, it was slander for the sake of clickbait drama. Does that mean all the people he accused are not guilty? Well, no, of course not. He does go after actual Nazis, and he even has enough balls to actually debate them. I don't have a problem with that. It's actually a good thing to directly challenge ideas like that so you can de-radicalize people and highlight the dangers in your community. The problem I have is the fact that he has taken the power away from this strategy by using it for false pretenses. It forces people to be even more skeptical of you whenever you label someone as a Nazi, because you lose credibility more and more every time you get it wrong. Every time you try to force that word to label something, it has no place labeling. But even though this is an extremely shitty thing to do, I don't think Xander Hall is a villain. I think he's a victim to a line of thinking that enables him to justify himself whenever he does something incredibly stupid or something incredibly reprehensible, because in his mind, he's doing it to fight another extreme line of thinking, so it's okay. To him, it's okay to slander people, it's okay to be hypocritical, it's okay to look stupid, as long as the ends justify the means. I'm reminded very much of Kraut and T and his war on the alt-right when I look at Xander Hall. Kraut, he wanted to fight a radical belief system that he fucking hated, but he destroyed himself in the process because he chose to take up disreputable strategies that Xander Hall is taking right now when it came to fighting the alt-right. He started making videos that made him look stupid. He started labeling detractors and those who he would argue with as Nazis. And it all reached its boiling point when it was exposed that he was running a Discord server with the express intentions of doxing and deplatforming his enemies. I think we all remember how that turned out for Kraut. So I guess I'm left wondering one thing. Are we just seeing history repeat itself here?